So yes, good evening everyone. This side Dr. Abhijeet, and today we are going to cover two very important topics in neuroanatomy today. That is, I will be talking about the diencephalon and especially about the thalamus, and I will be talking about the blood supply of the brain. I will be talking about the blood supply of the brain. So before starting with the session, guys, just yes, Trevor Millen, hi. So before starting with the session, guys, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if the audio and visuals are perfectly fine. Amit Gupta, good evening, beta. So before starting with the session, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if the audio and visuals are perfectly fine. Yes. Muthu Kumaran, hi. Shakil, good evening, beta. So yes. Hmm, sure. Let us first talk about the blood supply of the brain, then I will be coming on to the thalamus also. Yes, let us first talk about the blood supply of the brain. Now, Manganda Harika official, yes, okay, everything is fine from my end, yes. I will be starting with the circle of Willis, guys, as of now. I will be starting with the circle of Willis as of now. Now, there are actually 9 arteries which are forming the circle of Willis, and these are the arteries which are supplying the different parts of the brain as well, right? Yes, Anantapur official, yes, yeah. So let us start with the very first topic. I will be first discussing the blood supply, then I will be discussing about the thalamus and its connection, right? So yes. Now put the heading as yes, the circle of Willis, circle of Willis, or in Latin it is also called as circulus arteriosus of Willis, right? Now when I say circle of Willis, guys, what does it mean? What is the definition of it? What is the definition of this? It simply means the arterial anastomosis. Arterial anastomosis, guys. Anastomosis, when I have told you, like whenever two arteries or even more than two arteries are meeting at one point and they can exchange blood in opposite directions as well. Yes, they can exchange blood in opposite directions as well, vice versa. So it is an arterial anastomosis, guys. Anastomosis, okay, between 9 arteries, between the 9 arteries, guys, supplying the brain, supplying the brain. Now, before starting with this, yes, Dr. Janu, Kirti, before starting with this, guys, let us first, yes, let us first start from the basics, guys. You already know we have 4 chambers of the heart. Every time, guys, know I will be asking you vertebral artery is a branch of, basilar artery is a branch of, posterior cerebral artery is a branch of. To remember that in order, guys, let us first discuss about the basic chambers of the heart. You already know that we have the two atriums and the two ventricle, guys. So if I just want to show from the basics, guys, because you have to anyways take it to the left ventricle every time. I have always, whenever I'm teaching you the blood supply, guys, always try to reach the left ventricle. Now, guys, you already know this is the left part of the heart. We have one chamber called as the left atrium, right? Then we have another chamber, guys, that you already know that is the left ventricle. And in between, we have a valve, guys. In between, we have a valve. And I would appreciate if, guys, you will tell me in the chat box. Yes, yes, Dr. Janu, thank you so much. Now, can you appreciate this valve, guys? And I would appreciate if you can just text me in the chat box, guys. So we have the left atrium, we have the left ventricle, and from this left ventricle, guys, from this left ventricle, you guys already know we have the arch of aorta. Yes, Ram, very good. It is the mitral valve, beta. It is the mitral valve, or it is also called as the bicuspid valve, right? Over here, we have another valve, a semi-lunar valve. Can anyone tell me the name of this valve, guys? Between the left ventricle and the aorta. The left ventricle and the aorta. Yes. Good evening, Akhilesh. Good evening, beta. So yes, yes, this is the aortic valve, guys. That is you guys already know. This basically, yeah, it is between the aorta and the left ventricle. Now, every time, guys, Haley, yes, good evening, Ram, yeah, yes, you're right. Now, every time, guys, you have to reach the left ventricle, picking up any one artery, and you have to trace the path. Now, from this iota, guys, you already know we have basically three major branches which are coming directly from this iota, right? Please try to make it as simple as you can. Nothing fancy has to be drawn, right? Nothing fancy has to be drawn, guys, right? So, yes, try to make it as simple as Munganda. Basically, the tricuspid valve, it is present between the right atrium and the right ventricle. I am talking about only the left part of the heart over here. Okay, beta? So yes, Ram, very good. The first branch which Ram has already told, guys, you already know. Okay, let me just take another pen so that you don't confuse, guys. On the right side, guys, we have this brachiocephalic trunk. This it is the brachiocephalic trunk. Brachiocephalic trunk. Then, okay, guys, you already know we have on the left side we have left subclavian artery. Left subclavian artery. Then we have the left common carotid artery. Left common carotid artery. Right? We have these three branches, guys, which are directly coming from the aorta. Okay. Obviously, guys, yes, obviously, guys, just when you look, no, the heart, it is basically situated two-third on the left side and one-third right. Obviously, to reach the right side of the body, it has to take some extra length, it has to cover some extra length, and that is via this brachiocephalic trunk. Now this brachio, you guys already understand the brachium, the antebrachium, the parts of the upper limb, and like some branches to the, yes, the head portion as well. Now this okay, now this brachiocephalic trunk again divides, beta, into two parts. It again divides into two parts, right? And this is something that you guys already know. If we have the left subclavian artery, we will have the right subclavian artery. Yes, Ram, it's right. Yes, yes. It is the right subclavian artery. And guys, accordingly, we have the right common carotid artery. Right common carotid artery. Right common carotid artery. That is something like the basics that you guys have to know over here, right? Now if I simply ask you guys, the right subclavian artery, it is a branch of brachiocephalic trunk. Brachiocephalic trunk, it is a branch of aorta. Aorta coming from the left ventricle. So guys, you have to trace the path of the artery where it is coming from. Like, so every time, guys, please try to make very simple diagrams so that you can know, just connect it like this, right? Every time, like theory you can't remember, so the basic. What is the difference between the right and the left subclavian artery over here, guys? You can see the left subclavian arises directly from the arch of aorta, but the right subclavian, it is coming from brachiocephalic trunk, and brachiocephalic trunk coming from aorta, and then from the left ventricle, then from the left ventricle. Yes. Now, yes, Kirti, yes. Now I wonder why, Kirti, you are attending the class. You are already a doctor. Now, arteries which are forming the circle of Willis, guys, I have already told you that there are nine arteries, guys. That there are nine arteries. And remember, guys, yes, suddenly I saw you. Okay, now, guys, let us first take the orientation. Now, this is the anterior side, and let us suppose this is the posterior side. This is the posterior side. Posteriorly, guys, we have the vertebra. I think you everyone know how many vertebrae are there. Can anyone comment in the chat box? How many vertebrae are there in human adult? I'm not talking about the newborn. I'm talking about the human adult. And similarly, we have the artery which is coming from the subclavian artery, guys, from the subclavian artery. And remember, this artery, yes, from the right and the left, guys. Yes, Shakil Ahmed, very good. It is 26. Right and the left, guys. We have the vertebral artery. So remember, guys, over here that we have the two vertebral arteries. This one will be the right vertebral artery, and this one will be the left vertebral artery. Left vertebral artery. Now, guys, if I ask you the right vertebral artery, okay, obviously, beta, vertebra is behind. So we are actually starting from this posterior part right now, right? So basically, we have the right vertebral artery and the left vertebral. Right vertebral artery, it is a direct branch from the subclavian artery, right? Subclavian artery, right subclavian, brachiocephalic aorta, left ventricle. But when I say left vertebral artery, it is coming from left subclavian coming from aorta, aorta coming from the left ventricle, right? So the right vertebral artery and the left vertebral artery, they will join together, guys, to form, yes, they will join together to form, guys, remember, the basilar artery. They will be joining together to form the basilar artery, guys, right? So we have this basilar artery, right? Basilar artery. Now, you already know we have now this basilar artery, it is basically like formed by the right and the left vertebral artery, right and the left vertebral artery. And this basilar artery, guys, this basilar artery will be giving off the terminal branches, beta. It will be giving off the terminal branches, and please just try to remember the terminal branches of the basilar artery. This is nothing but, yes, the posterior cerebral artery. Everything is like posterior. We are going from posterior to anterior, right? So it is the, yes, please write down, it is left posterior cerebral artery, and we have the right posterior cerebral artery. Right posterior cerebral artery. So we have the left posterior cerebral artery and we have the right posterior cerebral artery, right? So now if I ask you, guys, if I ask you, left posterior cerebral artery is a branch of basilar artery. Basilar artery is formed by the right and the left vertebral artery, right? And similarly, if we talk about the left one coming from the left subclavian, aorta, left ventricle, this is how it goes, guys. This is how it goes. So right now, I hope this is clear to each and everyone, guys. I hope this is clear to each and everyone. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this part is clear. Okay, we have started posteriorly and how it is like going towards the anterior part, right? So पीछे से आगे की तरफ. चलो फटाफट से एक थम्स अप दे दो चैट बॉक्स में. राम, वेरी गुड बेटा. Beta, vertebral arteries are branches of subclavian artery. Okay, vertebral arteries are branches of the subclavian artery. Shakil Ahmed, very good, beta. Now, guys, over here, let us just see over here. Okay, now, guys, we already know we have two major arteries. Okay, you already know we have the common carotid artery, guys. We have the common carotid arteries, and this common carotid artery again will bifurcate into two. This common carotid artery again will bifurcate into two. We will have, yes, the left internal carotid artery, and we will have the left external carotid artery, right? We have the left internal carotid artery and the left external carotid artery. Similarly, the right one will also bifurcate, guys. I cannot show like over here, but yes, you should remember, guys, it will again bifurcate into two. Yes, we will have the right external carotid artery. I'm writing in short, and we have the right internal carotid artery. Right internal carotid artery. So, guys, let us assume that over here we have these two. Yes, I'm just trying to show you these two over here. These are the internal carotid artery. Over here, guys, remember that this is the, yes, this is the left side, guys, according to the anatomical position. So let us assume that this is the, okay, let me not write over here because I have to draw the branches also. So guys, remember, this is the internal carotid artery, right? This is the internal carotid artery of which side? Left side. And this is right side internal carotid artery. Internal carotid artery, right? This is right side internal carotid artery. So I'm over here, we are taking the internal carotid artery. Now, the main continuation, okay, the main continuation of the internal carotid artery, the main continuation of the internal, Muthu Kumaran, very good, of the internal carotid artery, it is the middle cerebral artery. Okay, it is the middle cerebral artery. So it will be the left middle cerebral artery, middle cerebral. Please be very clear with the spellings. Middle cerebral artery. Now, if I ask you, middle cerebral artery is a branch of internal carotid artery. Internal carotid artery is a branch of this common carotid artery. Common carotid, if it is right side, brachiocephalic trunk. If it is left side, it is coming from the left common carotid, aorta, left ventricle. Right? So you have to every way trace the path. So it is the left middle cerebral artery and it is the right middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery. Right middle cerebral artery. Now, now guys, remember over here that yes, we have the arteries over here. No, coming from the internal carotid artery. Yes, coming from the internal carotid artery, and it will be joining with the cerebral artery, guys, over here. It will be joining with the cerebral arteries over here. Yes, and this artery, guys, which is a branch of the internal carotid artery. एक branch है, one branch is the left middle cerebral artery, another branch which is coming from the internal carotid artery, and it is joining with the left posterior cerebral artery or the right posterior cerebral artery on both sides. Peter, remember over here, this artery, it is the posterior communicating artery. Okay, it is left side, so it is the left posterior communicating artery. Left posterior communicating artery. Very, very important. And similarly, we will have the right posterior communicating artery. Now, if I ask you, left posterior and right posterior communicating artery, they are branches of which artery, guys? Please diagram देख के बताओ. They are branches of which artery? I've already told you, but some of the times, no, guys, will be confusing. Ki left posterior is coming from the left posterior cerebral artery. It is not correct, beta. The left posterior communicating, it is coming from the internal carotid artery. It is coming from the internal carotid artery. Now, from the internal carotid artery, we have another branches, guys. We have another branches, right? We have another arteries from this internal carotid artery, and these branches, guys, these branches, they are called as anterior cerebral artery. Obviously, we are reaching the anterior part now. So over here, guys, remember these are the, yes, this will be the left anterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral artery. Yes, and over here will be the right anterior cerebral artery. I'm writing in short, anterior cerebral artery. And guys, remember there will be one artery which will be joining these both arteries. This is the anterior communicating artery. This one will be, yes, the anterior communicating artery. Anterior communicating artery. This is the anterior communicating artery. Now, this area, guys, which I'm highlighting over here, this is the circle of the Willis. This is the circle of the Willis, guys. This is something that you have to remember. This is the circle of Willis. And now you guys are going to tell me, yes, which artery is not a part of the circle of Willis? This question has been asked multiple number of times. You guys are going to tell me which artery is not a part of the circle of Willis. चलो बताओ. चलो. Now guys, you already know कि अगर मैं trace करूँ path को, so you already know we have this, yes. Okay, yes, the basilar artery, obviously the middle cerebral artery, Muhammad Zubayd Hussain Munganda Harika, very good beta. You can very well see, guys, the left posterior cerebral artery is apart, right? The right posterior cerebral artery is apart, 2. I have told you 9 arteries, guys, right? We have the left posterior communicating artery, right posterior communicating artery, 4. Internal carotid artery, 5. 6. Right internal carotid artery. We have like 6 now. We have the, okay, left and the right anterior cerebral arteries, right? 8, and 1 in the middle, that is the anterior communicating artery. 1 in the middle, that is the anterior communicating artery. So we have the left posterior cerebral artery, left, the right posterior cerebral artery, the right posterior communicating artery, right? The internal carotid artery on both sides. Yes, we have the left anterior cerebral artery, right anterior cerebral artery, and anterior communicating artery. Anterior communicating artery, guys. One artery which is not a part of this, it is the middle cerebral artery. That is again a question that has been asked multiple number of times. Apart from that, guys, there is one more branch which is coming from this internal carotid artery. There is one more branch which is coming from this internal carotid artery. And remember, guys, this branch of, yes, coming from this internal carotid artery, it is called as the anterior colloidal artery. Be very clear, it is called as the anterior choroidal artery. Choroidal artery. It is called as the anterior choroidal artery. Right? On both the sides it will be, yes, it will be the anterior choroidal artery. Again, it is not a part of the circle of Willis. Again, it is not a part of the circle of Willis. So I hope this is clear to each one of you. I hope, beta, this is clear to each one of you. All the 9 branches you can very well appreciate, right? And you can very well appreciate, guys, how to take one particular artery and go behind it, right? चलो इतना क्लियर हो गया. फटाफट से बता दो जल्दी से. फटाफट से बता दो if this is clear. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat box, guys, if this is clear to each one of you. चलो अगर ये क्लियर है फटाफट से बता दो if this is done to each one of you. Shakil, yes, Ifyoma, very good, beta. Let us now discuss something about the basilar artery also. Okay, let us now discuss, yeah, something related to, yes, Muhammad Zubayd, very good. We have discussed the circle of Willis in the blood supply of brain. I would be discussing on some arteries independently over here. And the very first one that I will be talking about, it is the basilar artery, guys. It is the basilar artery. Now, guys, when I say basilar artery, guys, basilar artery, remember it begins at the lower border of the pons. So if I just have to show you the section over here, guys, the anterior, the ventral aspect of the pons, आप pons को आगे से देख रहे हो, ठीक है? You're watching the pons from front, and this is how it will be like looking. Yeah, this is let us suppose this is the pons, guys, right? This is the pons, and remember, guys, the basilar artery, basically it is formed by the two vertebral arteries, right? You already know we have the two vertebral arteries, the right and the left vertebral artery, the right and the left vertebral artery. So we have this left vertebral artery, and we have the right vertebral artery. And these two arteries will be uniting. Okay, they'll be uniting at the lower border of the pons, and they will be giving rise to the one which is called as, yes, this is the basilar artery, guys. Now this is the basilar artery. So I am just taking one section over here. This is the basilar artery. Vaishak basilar artery. Basilar artery. So basically, obviously in this diagram also I've told you the right and the left will be combining together at the lower border of the pons to form the basilar artery, Now guys, over here just try to remember now, as soon as it reaches the, okay, we have a sulcus in between. जब मैंने pons पढ़ा था, when I like guys taught you pons, I have told you we have a sulcus in between, there is a depression in between, and through that depression, through that linear sulcus, this basilar artery will travel. Okay, it will be reaching the upper border of the pons, and guys remember over here it will be terminating into two terminal branches. It will be terminating into two terminal branches, and that is something we have already discussed. This is the posterior cerebral artery. This is the posterior cerebral artery, guys. This is the posterior cerebral artery. So we have, yes, you can very well see this is, please mention it, it is the left posterior cerebral artery. And guys, over here we will be having the right posterior cerebral artery. Right posterior cerebral artery. Now guys, coming, so it basically, the basilar artery begins at the lower border of the pons, right, and it is ending into the upper border of the pons, right? So this is how it goes, right? Now there are two terminal branches. Now this area, guys, which I'm highlighting, this is the pons, right? So let me just highlight for you people. This is the pons part, right? And this is the ventral aspect. This is the anterior aspect of the pons. We have a sulcus in between that is called as the basilar sulcus, through which this artery is passing. Okay. Now, while passing in the basilar sulcus in front of the pons, right, in the it is giving some branches which is supplying the pons itself. And remember, guys, these are called as the pontine branches. These are called as the pontine branches. So yes, these are the pontine branches, guys, right? So these are nothing but the pontine branches. The right pontine branches and the left pontine branches, both sides it will be like giving off transverse branches, and these are right and left pontine branches. Okay. Now, now guys, I hope this is clear as of now. इतना clear है सब लोगों को, right? Now, guys, we already know we have the cerebellar peduncles, right? The cerebral peduncles, we have the crus cerebri, okay? And you will see this basilar artery giving off a branch in the upper part of the pons, okay? It is not going above the pons, it is giving branch in the upper part of the pons. It is giving branch in the upper part of the pons. And remember guys, this branch which is like it is giving in the upper part of the pons guys, this branch, remember it is, yes, it is the left superior cerebellar artery. Left superior cerebellar artery. Similarly, we will have, yes, the right superior cerebellar artery. Right superior cerebellar artery. Right superior cerebellar artery. Right. So these are also the branches of the basilar artery, and this branch, beta, the basilar artery, just by reaching the upper part, okay, in the upper part of the pons, it is like dividing into two. That is, it is giving two branches. That is the superior cerebellar artery, the right and the left. Again, guys, in the lower aspect of the pons, you will see that this basilar artery is again giving two more branches over here. It is giving two more branches over here. And remember, these branches in the lower aspect of the pons, okay, it is called as the left anterior. Yes, anterior, because it is in anterior, बेटा ये anterior view है, नीचे की तरफ है, so we will call it as inferior cerebellar artery. Left anterior inferior cerebellar artery. Right? Cerebellar artery. And remember guys, we can also write it down. From the anterior inferior cerebral artery, a branch will come, okay, which will supply the labyrinth. This branch is called as, please remember, it is the left labyrinth artery. Labyrinthine artery. Guys, again, this is like majority of the books. Yes, it is the anterior inferior cerebral artery where it is coming from. But if it is not mentioned in the question, please go with the basilar artery directly. Right? The best answer, the labyrinth artery, it is a part of, like it is coming from the anterior inferior cerebellar artery. But if it is not in the option, go with the basilar artery. Go with the basilar artery, guys. So I hope the diagram of the basilar artery is clear to each one of you, beta. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this is clear to each one of you. We have discussed the circle of Willis. We have discussed, yes, we have discussed the basilar artery over here. चलो फटाफट से एक thumbs up दे दो chat box में if this is clear to each one of you. If this is clear to each one of you, and then I will be discussing the vertebral artery. Sure. Mohammad Zubaid Hussain, very good, very good. What about rest, guys? Are you alive? Yes. These four branches, yeah, these are all pontine branches, beta. If you want, I'll just circle it. These are all pontine branches. These all, the left and the right pontine branches, right? Munganda, yes. Now, now, guys, let us discuss about, yeah, the vertebral artery. Hmm. The vertebral artery. Yes, it's clear. Right on. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Now, guys, let us just try to simplify it. We are now going to discuss the vertebral artery in detail because we have already started our discussion. We have the left vertebral artery and the right vertebral artery. And these two vertebral arteries, basically, they're branches of which part? The subclavian artery. The subclavian artery, right? So yes, let us now discuss about these vertebral arteries in detail. How many parts and branches are there? So please put the heading as the vertebral artery. Now, when I say vertebral artery, it is basically a branch of first part of subclavian artery. It is a branch of first part of subclavian artery. We have different parts of the subclavian artery, but as of now, just remember it is a branch of the first part of the subclavian artery. Yes, Hussein, it is the four parts, and we are going to discuss these four parts. Yes. So the origin, basically, if we talk about the origin of this artery, it is from the first part of the subclavian artery. It basically arises in the root of the neck, right? And as a branch from the first part of the subclavian artery. Now, okay, over here, guys, remember, we have like four parts of these arteries, right? We have like four parts. Now, the first part of the vertebral artery, guys, which you see, that is the origin part, okay? That is the subclavian artery. And guys, okay, let me just draw and show it to you people. Yes, yes, let me just draw and show it to you people. Hussein, just please, yeah, just see this also. Yes, and yes, please try to answer questions which I will be asking after this. Everyone. No, yeah. Mhm. Now let us suppose that this is the first part. Okay, this is the first part of subclavian artery. First part of subclavian artery. SCA stands for the subclavian artery. The subclavian artery, right? The first part of the subclavian artery. Now, what is happening, guys? What is happening over here? Now, this artery, guys, this artery, yes. So vertebral artery is basically from the first part. Let us just try to draw this vertebral artery. Yes, this is the first part of the subclavian artery. Yeah. Now, this part, until and unless it is reaching this foramen transversum, okay. Now you already know. Yes, this is the vertebral artery. And okay guys, we have like various cervical vertebra. Okay, we have the various cervical vertebra, and you guys already know that yes, in the cervical vertebra we have a foramen. We have a foramen, guys, and that foramen, you already know that is called as the foramen transversum. Okay, foramen transversum, तुम लोगों को पता है. Let us just try to look at the structure of the vertebra. अगर मैं simply C1 vertebra की बात करूं, C1 vertebra is also called as, can anyone tell me in the chat box that C1 vertebra it is also called as C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 and C6? These are the cervical vertebra. C basically stands for cervical vertebra, guys. Remember the cervical vertebra, guys, they are actually seven in number. They are seven in number, right? And every vertebra, let us just talk about the C1 vertebra, that is called as the atlas. Yes, very good, Hussein. Very good. And C2 vertebra, it is called as axis. You already know we don't have any body in the C1 vertebra. C1 vertebra has no body. Yes, we will be discussing it in head and neck part also. But as of now, yes, Maposa, very good. Zubaid, very good. Muganda, very good. Atlas axis, you already know. Let us just talk about the C1 vertebra, guys. Now this C1 vertebra has some transverse part. Okay, any vertebra is a bone, guys. Okay, some part of the bone, it is coming out. It is called as process, right? It is called as process. So we have transverse process. Okay, transversely body में बाहर आ रहा है. Okay, that is the transverse process, guys, which you can see. And over here, guys, you remember we have like bifid spinous process in the first cervical vertebra. Again, we have like two arches, the anterior arch, the posterior arch. Okay, now guys, in the transverse process we have a foramen, guys. we have a foramen, an opening is there. An opening is there. And remember guys, this is called as transversus foramina. Transversus, okay, or yeah, or I can simply say it as foramen transversalis. Okay, it is called as foramen transversalis, right? Now guys, from this foramen transversalis, okay, from all like C6 will also have, C5 will also have, yes, foramen transversum, transversarium. From this foramen transversum, what will pass guys? These are nothing but the vertebral artery. These are nothing but the vertebral artery. So they are passing from the foramen of transverse foramen of C6, C5, C4, C3, C2 and C1, right? So the first part guys, yes. Now the first part, it is the origin. This is the first part. It is the origin to foramen transversarium. Now, right? Now this first part, guys, this first part, it will give off like muscular branches, guys. It will be giving off like muscular branches. So this part of the vertebral artery, this is nothing but बेटा यहाँ से start कर देना कि ये vertebral artery है. ये क्या है? Vertebral artery है. और vertebral artery का ये first आप लोगों को ध्यान रखना है. This is like the first part of the vertebral artery. Okay, the first part, which is like origin to this foramen transversarium. It is starting from the subclavian and it is going till the foramen transversarium. But over here, remember guys, it gives off muscular branches, right? It has like it supplies the muscles, right? So as of now, just remember it gives off muscular branches. But over here, guys, the second part of the vertebral artery, if you can just focus over here, guys, the second part, it is this artery, it is inside the foramen transversarium. So I can simply say that the second part, it is within the foramen transversarium. Foramen transversarium, right? It is within the foramen transversarium or transverse foramina or transverse foramen, right? So first and second part clear हो गया. So we have actually four parts, guys. We have actually four parts. इतना clear है? फटाफट से बताओ first and second. I hope I'm audible and visible, guys, to everyone. Second part from foramen transversarium of C6 to C, like C6 to C1. Yes, yes, right. Within foramen transversarium from C6 to C1, guys. Again, remember, guys. Yes. Okay, I hope I'm audible and visible, guys. आवाज आ रही है सब लोगों को ना? Yeah. C7 से ये पास नहीं होती. From the C7, it is not passing, guys. Okay. C7 it is not passing, right? C7 से एक vein pass करती है, that is the vertebral vein, and that is again a question, guys. We'll be discussing it later on. Yeah, the vertebral vein basically that passes from the C7 transverse foramina. But over here, remember the third part, beta. The third part. Now, remember, guys, whenever this vertebral artery which comes from the foramen transversarium, okay, and it runs on the posterior arch of the atlas, okay, then guys, it will be like going up to the foramen magnum over here, right? So we have like this is foramen magnum, foramen magnum. So basically the third part, this third part, guys, you can very well see this third part, it is from foramen transversarium of C1 vertebra to foramen magnum, and guys, this fourth part, if you can just see the fourth part, this fourth part, it is, yes, Crystal Medicos, thank you, yes. This fourth part, it is basically above the foramen magnum, above foramen magnum, above the foramen magnum. Basically, foramen magnum is the part, guys, जहां से क्या pass करता है. Basically, we have the okay. You already know we have the medulla oblongata, the lower part of the medulla oblongata, which continues to the spinal cord. So this is the foramen. This is the space through which that lower part of the medulla oblongata will be there, and below we will have the spinal cord. Above the foramen magnum, it is the, yes, the fourth part of the vertebral artery. You guys already know it is the intracranial part, right? It is the intracranial part. It will be going inside the no cranial cavity. So this is also called as the intracranial part, and this is something very, very, very important. Very, very, very important. So we have like 4 parts over here, guys. So you should remember the first part, the second part, the third part, and the fourth part, which is above the foramen magnum, right? So yes, I hope this is clear, everyone. Just give me a thumbs up, guys, in the chat box if this is clear to every one of you. ये चारों पार्ट समझ में आ गए? If this is clear to every one of you, please give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this is clear to every one of you. Right? Chal. Mafosa, very good, Peter. Now, Munganda, very good. Now, guys, remember over here that the fourth part, guys, will be giving off certain branches, and that is okay. Guys, remember the first part, it is giving muscular branches. The second part, it is giving spinal branches. The spinal branches, right? The spinal branches. The third part, guys, remember it is in the suboccipital triangle. Okay, it is present in suboccipital triangle. I will be talking about this triangle when I will be discussing about head and neck, right? Yeah, it is present in the suboccipital triangle, and it also gives off muscular branches. It also gives off muscular branches supplying the muscles of the neck, the occipital part actually, right? And the fourth part, guys, it is like the one which is like very, very, very important. So remember, guys, all the branches of the fourth part. We have anterior spinal artery. We have discussed this in like spinal cord supply also. In front of the spinal cord, the artery is going down and supplying the entire. It is in the median sulcus. Okay, the median fissure, guys, the anterior median fissure. So in that fissure, in that opening, this spinal artery is running continuously throughout the length of the spinal cord. So that is the anterior spinal artery. We have behind also in the posterior median sulcus, we have the posterior spinal artery. So in front of the spinal cord, anterior spinal artery. Behind the spinal cord, we have the posterior spinal artery. Posterior spinal artery. Then, guys, we have one more over here. Remember, that is posterior inferior cerebellar artery. The right and the left. Posterior inferior cerebellar artery. The right posterior inferior cerebellar artery and the left posterior inferior cerebellar artery. Then, guys, we also have the medullary branches. We also have the medullary branches. And guys, remember, we also have the meningeal branches. The meningeal branches. We also have the meningeal branches. Very, very important. These 5 branches are like very, very important, guys. Right? Medullary branches, obviously, they will be supplying to the medulla. The medullary branches will be supplying to the medulla, right? to medulla only, right? The meningeal branches will be supplying the meninges of the brain, which I will be discussing up tomorrow, right? Now, guys, anterior spinal artery, you just have to remember one point. It is the longest artery in the body. It is the longest artery in the body. It is the longest artery in the body, right? Again, guys, remember the posterior spinal artery. It is the first branch. Again, being very like emphasizing on this, it is the first branch of this. Yes, the vertebral artery, right? It is the first branch of the vertebral artery inside the cranial cavity, guys. Sorry, inside the yeah, it is the first branch of the vertebral artery. So many of the times they have asked this question as well. It is the first branch of the vertebral artery. I hope this is clear to every one of you. Beta, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this is done. If this is done, the vertebral artery is done. Right? We have discussed basilar, we have discussed vertebral, we have discussed the circle of Willis. Now we are going to discuss one important artery, and that is called as the internal carotid artery. The internal carotid artery. Munganda Harika, very good guys. What about rest? Chalo, what about rest guys? Are you still aware? चलो फटाफट से एक थम्स अप दे दो if you are alive. Okay. The internal carotid artery, guys, we have already discussed it, but I will be just like in short telling you about this internal carotid artery, right? Remember, guys, it has four parts. It has four parts, right? Yes, Utip, very good. Contact Shankar, Brimk, like very unique names, I suppose. And I don't know how do you get these unique names. Now, guys, I have already told you we have something called as the carotid sheath, right? We have something called as the carotid sheath, guys. I will be discussing this carotid sheath. And remember, guys, inside this carotid sheath, yes, we have this internal carotid artery. And remember the external carotid artery, it is not a part of, it is not inside the carotid sheath. So if I just wanted to tell you guys, this is the carotid sheath. This is the common carotid artery. It is common carotid artery. And remember, guys, that this common carotid artery can be of right and left both sides, right and left both sides. And it is giving off two branches. We have external carotid artery, and this is the internal carotid artery. Internal carotid artery. Now, guys, remember over here, the internal carotid artery, it is present inside this carotid sheath, right? That's why the very first part of the internal carotid artery, okay, it is called as, yes, the first part, that is the cervical part, because it is present in the neck region, right? So remember, guys, this is the cervical part that is like present in the neck region. And this part, since it is inside the carotid sheath, it will never give any branch. It will never give any branch, the first part, right? Then guys, you have to understand we have like, yes, the second part, that is the petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay, we have like the foramen lacerum. Yes. So yes, the second part basically, no, it goes into the petrous part of the temporal bone. Temporal bone, you already know it is above the ear, right? We'll be discussing the temporal bone when I will be talking about the head and neck osteology. from Tuesday or Wednesday, right? So this is the foramen lacerum part, right? One going into the carotid canal, and this is the foramen lacerum. And remember, guys, then the internal carotid artery after coming here will be going into, yeah, once it leaves the foramen lacerum, right, it goes into the cavernous sinus. So let us just suppose that this is the cavernous sinus. Cavernous sinus. And once it leaves the cavernous sinus, it will be going into the yes, the cranial cavity, guys, the cranial cavity. Let us just try to make it very clear. So this is the internal carotid artery. So it is coming from the neck region, guys, and that is the cervical part. It goes into the petrous part of the temporal bone, right? It goes into the petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay. Then, guys, you already know it will go into the cavernous sinus. Okay, then it will like make a loop in the cavernous sinus, right? And then it goes above the cavernous sinus into the cavity, into the cranial cavity, into the cranial cavity. So this is how the root of this takes place. The common carotid artery, the right and the left, you already know. The left common carotid artery comes directly from the aorta. The right common carotid artery, it will come from the brachiocephalic trunk, aorta, and then from the left ventricle, then from the left ventricle. Now, guys, over here, if you can just imagine over here, guys, this part which is no inside the carotid sheath, guys, this part, okay, this entire part, let me just draw this carotid sheath a little bit more. So yes, which is inside this carotid part. So remember, guys, this is the first part. I'm just marking it. So this is the cervical part, first part of the internal carotid artery, that is the cervical part. Okay, and this cervical part, it is inside carotid sheath. So remember, guys, that there are no branches. No branches. External carotid artery is not in the carotid sheath, it is coming out. So we have branches from the external carotid artery, but we have no branches from the first part. We have no branches from the first part of the internal carotid artery. The second part, remember, guys, this is the like the second part. The second part, it is the cavernous part. The cavernous part, right? Sorry, not exactly the cavernous. Sorry. It is the petrous part, guys. It is coming into the petrous part of the temporal bone, right? So the second part, it is the petrous part. So it will only have, okay, it is only supplying the bone. It is only supplying the bone. So it is the petrous part, guys. Okay. So one, it is like going into this carotid canal, and then we have the foramen lacerum. So it only gives off osseous branches. Osseous means bony because it only supplies the petrous part of the temporal bone and like the nearby structures. So it only gives osseous branches, one which is supplying to the bone, right? The third part, guys, the third part, remember, it is the cavernous part. Cavernous part, guys, and remember, the cavernous part, once know the internal carotid artery, it clears the foramen lacerum. It goes into the cavernous sinus, right? Cavernous sinus is basically like resting on this foramen lacerum. It is just above this foramen lacerum, right? The cavernous sinus, it is just above this foramen lacerum. So this is the entire cavernous sinus, right, which is resting on this foramen lacerum. So that is the third part. And fourth part, guys, it is the cerebral part. If you can just see over here. Yeah, this is the cerebral part. The fourth part, that is the cerebral part. Okay. One, So this part, it is basically inside the cranial cavity, right? It is like supplying the cranial part, right? Now, this bent of this internal carotid artery in the cavernous sinus, this is called as carotid siphon, right? This bent, ये जो bent आपको दिख रहा है internal carotid artery का, this is called as carotid siphon. And remember, this is basically to dampen the pulsations of this internal carotid artery. To dampen pulsations of internal carotid artery. To dampen the pulsations of the internal carotid artery, right? So if we talk about the branches, guys, I've already told you first part, like there are no branches since it is inside the carotid sheath. If you just want to draw like bit over here, you already know this is the carotid sheath, which is covering the common carotid and the internal carotid artery. So the first part will obviously have no branches, right? Branches will come from external carotid because it is not in the carotid sheath. But second part, guys, it gives bony branches to the surrounding bones, right? The osseous branches. The third part, which is inside the cavernous sinus, it gives off branches which supplies the pituitary gland. So basically it is, remember guys, over here, very, very important. It gives off branches which will be supplying the pituitary gland. So these branches are the superior and inferior hypophyseal arteries. The superior and inferior hypophyseal arteries. Okay. Then it is basically we have the sphenoidal air cells, right? Sinuses. Like whatever, like guys, I will be teaching you the cavernous sinus. Whatever is in relation with the medial aspect of the cavernous sinus, they all are supplied by it. So basically, we have artery 2. Okay, we have like artery 2, sphenoidal air sinus, sphenoidal air sinuses, and we have meningeal branches also. Meningeal branches also, guys. It supplies the dura mater of the middle cranial fossa. तीन meningeal branches होते हैं, dura, arachnoid and pia mater. So remember, it supplies the dura of, yes, the middle cranial fossa. The middle cranial fossa. It supplies the dura of the middle cranial fossa. Yes. Now the fourth one, guys, the fourth one, it is the now the first part of the internal, this carotid artery, which as soon as it comes out, remember guys, this is the first branch which is like over here. As it comes out the cavernous sinus, this first branch, guys, this first branch, remember this is the ophthalmic artery. It has been asked multiple number of times, ophthalmic artery. It is the first branch of, yes, the cerebral part of internal carotid artery. Cerebral part, because above the cavernous sinus it is the cerebral part. So it is the first branch of the cerebral part of the internal carotid artery. Right? So I hope this is clear. We have another branches, guys. You already know the other branches. We have already discussed this in circle of Willis. Yes, we have the middle cerebral artery, right? The middle cerebral artery. We have, yes, the anterior choroidal artery. We have the posterior communicating artery, guys, the posterior communicating artery, right? I told you it is coming from the internal carotid. And we have the anterior cerebral artery. We have the anterior cerebral artery. So these four we have already discussed, guys. So we'll just be mentioning the names over here. Yes. So we have the ophthalmic artery. The other branches which you can just write over here. We have the middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery. We have the anterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral artery. We have anterior choroidal artery which supplies the choroidal plexus. Anterior choroidal artery. And We also have the posterior communicating artery, the left and the right. Posterior communicating artery, right? Branch of the internal carotid artery joining with the posterior cerebral artery. That is something you already know. So this is about the internal carotid artery, guys. The internal carotid artery. So I hope this is clear to each one of you. Beta, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you are done with this. फटाफट से एक thumbs up दे दो if you are done with this, guys. The internal carotid artery. चलो Chalo, clear. Thanks. Okay. Manganda, very good. Again, guys, two important things that I will be like just trying to tell you how which area they are supplying to. If let us suppose this is the superolateral surface and this is the medial surface, guys. This is the medial surface, right? So remember, guys, we have this. Yes, the sulcus. You already know the lateral sulcus, and especially this is the Sylvian sulcus because it is the posterior aspect over here. Guys, remember that. Yes, just to show you guys the superolateral surface, right? Which area is supplied by what? So remember, guys, this is in the superolateral surface, the major artery. Dominant is the middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery. So basically I've divided this, I've divided a line just to initiate the, okay, along the upper border of the superolateral surface. And yes, so the dominant artery which is supplying in the superolateral surface, it is the middle cerebral artery, right? It is the middle cerebral artery. Artery that is running in the Sylvian sulcus. I've already told you this is this black one. It is the Sylvian sulcus, guys. The Sylvian sulcus, that is the posterior limb of the lateral sulcus. Lateral sulcus has three limbs: anterior, ascending, and posterior. So this one is the posterior limb of lateral sulcus, and that is given a special name, guys, over here. That is called as the Sylvian sulcus. And in this sulcus, in this gap, guys, this middle cerebral artery is running. Middle cerebral artery is running, guys, over here. And remember, it is supplying this whole area, guys, over here, right? This is supplying this whole area, the frontal part, the parietal part, yeah, the majority of the temporal part over here. Okay, the upper part, guys, the upper part, it is basically supplied by the anterior. Yes, the upper part, it is basically supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. It is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. And in the superolateral aspect, if you just try to see the posterior one, yes, the posterior one, it is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, like yes, occipital lobe, right? Occipital lobe, पीछे occipital lobe ही होगा along with the inferior part of temporal lobe. Inferior part of temporal lobe. So it is basically supplied by this posterior cerebral artery only. It is supplied by this posterior cerebral artery only. Okay, so that is something you have to remember. Medial surface, guys, if we just try to see the medial surface over here, just for your sake, guys, I wanted to like complete the topic. Yes, you already know this is the corpus callosum. This is the corpus callosum, and yes, we are like dividing this into like this. So in the in the medial part, guys, remember it is the anterior cerebral artery, which is like the dominant artery over here. You can see the corpus callosum in the medial and the sagittal section, guys, right? So this is the medial cerebral artery, which is the dominant artery over here, right? The dominant artery over here. Apart from that, you will see, yes, sorry, the anterior cerebral artery. Yes, we have this anterior cerebral artery, which is supplying the major part of the medial surface. Whereas, yes, remember the middle cerebral artery like supplies only a small part of the temporal lobe. And guys, yes, the remaining it is again by the posterior cerebral artery, right? Posterior cerebral artery. Now, so that is about the blood supply, guys. Even the types of hemorrhages are asked, guys. Even the types of hemorrhages are asked, and you should be like aware of that as well. So extradural hemorrhage, basically it is the anterior division of the middle meningeal artery, okay, which is close to the pterion, right? We have subdural hemorrhage. In subdural hemorrhage, S for S, superior cerebral vein is like the bridging vein, which is bridging the dural venous sinuses. It is like hampered, right? Even guys, the subarachnoid hemorrhage, the rupture of the very aneurysm is there. Intracerebral hemorrhage, we have the Charcot's artery. Okay, I've not discussed this Charcot's artery, or it is also called as lenticulate striate artery, guys. Now, this artery basically it is coming from no, this we have already discussed this internal capsule yesterday, right? So it is basically supplying the. So it is coming from, yeah, it is also called as the artery of the cerebral hemorrhage, and it is basically supplying that part as well, right? So that is supplying the posterior limb of yeah, and the lentiform part. So that is why like that's called as. So that is about the blood supply. I hope it is clear to you guys. So please just let me know if it is clear to each one of you. Just give me a thumbs up if it is done. We have discussed with the circle of Willis, the basilar artery, the vertebral artery, the internal carotid artery, and the parts like the majority of the parts in the superolateral and the medial surface. Now we are going to come on to one of the topics that we have we have to discuss. That is the thalamus, guys. The thalamus and its connections. The thalamus and its connections. Yeah, we are going to discuss about the thalamus and its connection, right? So yes, before starting with this, guys, whosoever is there, just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this is clear to every one of you, right? Chalo. Now let us start with the thalamus, but before that, just giving you a basic idea, guys, over here, that what is diencephalon? Diencephalon. Diencephalon. Yes, Surbhi Verma, very good, guys. Now, guys, you already know we have okay. Now this diencephalon, it is basically now it is line between, okay, below, guys, you already know. Let us just try to see over here. If I'm taking a sagittal section, guys, you already know. Yes, we have the midbrain above. Over here we have the diencephalon, and above, guys, you already know we have the two cerebral hemispheres, right? The two cerebral hemispheres are there. Then we have the diencephalon, and then we have the midbrain, right? So yes, that is something you guys already know, right? So if I just want to show you, let me just draw for you guys so that the connections are very much clear. So if it is the two cerebral hemispheres, the lower part, guys, will be having the diencephalon. Then we have the midbrain. Then you already know we have pons. Yes, the medulla oblongata. And behind, guys, you already know we have the fourth ventricle, right? And behind this we have the cerebellum, right? This is medulla oblongata continuing as spinal cord, pons, midbrain, and this is something called as diencephalon. And above we have the cerebrum or the cerebral hemisphere. So this diencephalon, it is basically located in between the cerebrum and the midbrain, in between the cerebrum and the midbrain, right? So yes, let us just try to write this, guys. Whatever the site it is, you already know the site. It is basically